introduce the chairman of the meeting, Professor Vittorio Valli. Professor Valli, please, the floor is yours.
I am very happy to present this seminar about a very beautiful book, GEELY Dives Out, and I will tell some words about the authors and the book. The authors are Hua Bang, Giovanni Balsè, and Wenxian Zhang. Hua Bang is full professor of strategy and innovation management, associate dean of Emilion Business School, Asia, and executive board member of China Gas Global and numerous other institutions. He is author of over 100 publications on China, the automobile industry, and several international business subjects. Giovanni Balsè is professor of international business. He was professor of international economics at Turin University and vice president of the Observatory on the Emerging Economy of Turin, which has contributed to organize this meeting. He is author of numerous articles and books about international industrial economics and the main emerging economies. Among his recent publications, I remember an important article with Vladimir Andreev on the multinational of emerging countries investing in developed countries, and not the other way around, as it was usual. Another article on GEELY, and finally an article on the internationalization of the Fiat Group. Wenxian Zhang is full professor in the College of Liberal Arts in Florida at the Rollins College in the US, and has extensively written on international business problems. For example, he wrote 2 volumes on the case of Huawei Gas Global. He has written also a book on China's Belt and Road Initiative, and another important book on China seen from American eyes. On the volume of the 3 authors, I will now only say that it's a beautiful, deep, and well-written book. I will add some more comments about the author's presentation and the general debate at the end of the general debate. Now I give the floor to Professor Wang.
Hi, everybody. It's our great pleasure to present our core elements of the book. So just very quickly, talking about the background. In fact, as we all worked on the Chinese economy side, and particular Giovanni and me, we had worked on the automobile industry in the past, and this is the work of years of cooperation and of friendship of we 3. And thanks to the GEELY project, we 3, it's the first time that worked together. So I will start the presentation about this book. And in fact, it's the result of lots of field works, interviews with top management, both in China and in Sweden. So you can see that the total book is composed by 13 chapters. So here the presentation will highlight some core elements of our findings. So let's move to the next page. So we're going to very quickly talk about the auto industry, then the rise of GEELY. When Wenxian, if he is still, I think that Wenxian has quit because of the time constraints. Now we switch to the winter time, so I will take his part, talking about Li Shufu, the entrepreneur. entrepreneurship. And I think that very recently, just last month on the 29th October, maybe you have heard about the news that Volvo Cars has raised 2.3 billion US dollar in its IPO at Stockholm. So this is also a kind of the good news, both for Volvo and for GEELY, after 11 years of co-investment and co-development. Then we were a little bit deeper talking about how GEELY moves from a local to a multinational actors, and we'll talk. Giovanni will give us more information about the acquisition of Volvo. And since we have visited the CEVT, as a kind of converging point of asset creation, both by Volvo and by GEELY. So we grant the importance for that. And we have also talked about the further expansion goes beyond Volvo. And also the last part, we are going to talk about the mobility solutions as a kind of the, not only making the cars, but also innovating in its business models. Yes, next page. Next, please. Yeah, here is a very quick historical perspective of the evolution of the Chinese automobile industry. If we make a regional planning, we can see that China has already become the first global automotive market since 2009. And currently, the volume before the COVID was bypassing 30 million units of new car production and sales. So for those who had interest in talking about, understanding about how the China was the automobile industry was developed, you can see those 4 big periods. And I think that the very important stage is the accession of the WTO that opens significantly the market. And thanks to the foreign direct investment, technology transfer, and for sure, the development of the local car makers, that makes these 30 million units of cars happening. And also, we need to understand that the penetration rate of the electric vehicles for the last quarter, the latest quarter, is about 15%, which means that 15% of the new cars sold in China are electric and hybrid new energy vehicles. So this percentage is significant. Let's move to the next page. So here, yes, we can, here the text is very small. While this gives you an idea about who are those key players. Oh, it's a mixed picture about leading world car makers like Volkswagen, Toyota, Nissan, among the others. And also with Chinese companies, you see that here, according to the statistic of that year, GEELY ranked number 3. So here, for sure, for those who are interested in, we can circulate this presentation for you for your further reference. And for sure, for those who are further interested in our book, you're welcome to buy that book. Next page. Geographically speaking, next page. Yes, go back to the map of China. So here also gives you a very brief information to illustrate via the map of China to see where are those industrial clusters are based. Just like, for example, in Italy, Turin is very important, right? And since China is big, so there are several large, industrial auto clusters. You can see that Beijing is one. The northern part is the first auto works in collaboration with Toyota and Mazda. and for sure Volkswagen is very important. In the Shanghai part, around the Shanghai, you will have General Motors, Volkswagen, EVCO, among the others. And the GEELY is in these zones, is composed by Shanghai, Zhejiang, Jiangsu province. And then in the middle part of China, sort of the middle part, you will have the Dongfeng Motors in partnership with Nissan, Kia, PSA, Honda, Renault. And then in the western part, where you can find the Panda from China, here you will find the Chang'an. In fact, Chang'an, as you know, that they have the research center here in Turin. And recently, I met the general manager now back to China, and he used to work for Turing Research Center for 7-8 years. And then in the southern part, which is not far away from Hong Kong, Macau, you have the Guangdong province, and there is the partnership with Honda, Toyota, Fiat, Mitsubishi, and for sure BYD and the Daimler. They have created a joint venture. So this map will give you a very quick understanding about who are those car makers and what are those joint ventures. So easy understanding to have about a global picture of China automobile market. Next page. So GEELY, the story of GEELY was recent. So in fact, this is a grassroots farm, entrepreneurs raised from the rural area of China. And at the age of the late 20s, he started to do his small business, and then progressively founded the GEELY company in 1986, and then moved several circles of the business, from refrigerators, then to motorcycles, and then to the low-end car production. So, and don't forget that in China, it's not saying that you are free to access to this market, and that there was a request of the license to access this market. So GEELY was in a very difficult situation as a small private company to access an industry that requests technology and capitals. So that is why later we want to discuss the entrepreneurship of the founder. Next page. Here is the evolution of the sales volume of GEELY Auto, started from 2009 to 2019. So you can see that accumulated size is over around 1.4 million units from one side, and from the other side, it's true that in terms of the exportation, it's still marginal, right? Despite decades of the development. So that is why there is a linkage between exportation, way of overseas expansion, and acquisition of overseas assets, to understand the real business challenge between the overseas market. Either you use exportation, SKD, or use the acquisition of the assets. Next page. Maybe Professor Vittorio could mute the micro. Yeah. So here is the financial operation. As we can see that it's in a health situation. There is the it's a profitable business, right? GEELY is a listed company, so it's subjected to the the joint controlling of the shareholders. Next page. Here, it is also an interesting observation about why there are so many plants. You see that the GEELY has 4 engine plants, 2 transmission plants, 5 component plants, 4 universities and institutes. For example, one university is composed of over 10,000 students, and 1 research institute. But in fact, the research institute or the center, 1 research institute, but more research centers. And there are also 8 assembly plants. So from a economies of scales perspective, it's not necessarily, if you calculate the 1 million units of the cars by 8 assembling plants, it seems it's not a very reasonable or rational organization. Well, the hidden part of the reality is that GEELY is also supported by the regional government in China. So regional government, to boost their local economy and the employment, they are providing the land and even providing the bank loans through the local banks, so as to attract GEELY as a kind of a viable partners. So if we use a kind of the Cornell's planned economy theory, there is a certain level of the soft budget constraints for GEELY in China, I'm talking about. Right. Next page. Okay, so here GEELY is a group. So GEELY as the holding group, on the upper left part, you can see the auto group that is composed by several brands, like the GEELY brand, Link-Co, Geometry, among the others. You have the Lotus as well, and the Smart in this group. Then Volvo is independent, right? So the Polestar is also the brand belonging to Volvo. Then you will have the commercial vehicles. It's on the way of the development. It's on the upper right part. And then you will have the GEELY Technology Group on the down and the left part. Here you see that it's technology innovation, different sorts of technology innovation, like flying cars, and also like the mobility solutions, like the second logo, C-shape, right? It's called the Cao Cao, for example. It's in this group. Then you will have some other non-core business group. It's called the Meantime. And then on the right bottom part is the talent group, composed by professional training, degree training to bachelor, and now is expected to the master level training even in different cities like Beijing, and then in the southern part like Hainan. Next page. So Giovanni, you would like to take this part, or I continue? Giovanni? Hello? Is Giovanni there?
Yes, go until the entrepreneurship.
Okay.
2-3
so
slides. Yes.
Okay. So you see that in the early stage of the development, the first brand on the upper left part, round shape, is the GEELY brand, and it's true that the first round is a kind of the people's car, right? Then progressively, with in the later stage, after the acquisition of Volvo, especially, they change the mission to make to become making the safest, most environment friendly, and the most energy efficient vehicles. So there are also some sub brands that we can talk about later. Yes, next page. Here, you see that the GEELY's expansion is accompanied by the acquisition of the brand. We have talked about Volvo and the Polestar, the first two logos. Then the Smart was the result of the strategic alliance and the equity joint venture with Daimler recently to create. The ambition is to build the electric version of the smart car that we are going to also discuss about later. That means it is not only the technology transfer from Daimler to GEELY, while in that case it was a reverse technology transfer. It means that it was a GEELY that developed the platform for the electric vehicles for the future electric smart cars. So this is also a very interesting finding in the later conclusion part we want to reinforce. Then you will have the Proton, the Malaysian brand. Geometry is a brand for electric vehicles. Lotus, we know that this is a British brand, and will be, GEELY has the ambition to revitalize that. And again, it will stop the production of the traditional car and directly expand its portfolio towards electric racing car or electric SUV car platform. So it's a revitalization of the a sleeping brand after years. The Lynk & Co is also an interesting case that Giovanni will share with us to illustrate that the asset creation by two companies. LEVC, it is also an interesting case. It's based on the London taxi, the famous London taxi. And now, after a long years of commitment, GEELY is also building electric version of the London taxi, not only driving on London, while now it's driving at Paris in the COVID period. It's a very popular car among the others. And then the last one is less familiar, is the commercial vehicles. Next page. So now we want to review the person behind the GEELY. Is this person called the Li Shufu. And the Li Shufu, as I mentioned, that has no, it was raised in the rural area in Zhejiang province. It's around 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers away from Shanghai. And here is kind of visionary entrepreneurs. And if you take a look on his business development in that expansion, he dare to choose the business in the first stage, like the electric refrigerators, then the motorcycles, then the electric, now the vehicles that represent the mega trend of the economic development and the economic situation for Chinese consumers. So he deliberately, or proactively choose those products and access to those markets. And for sure, you need overcome all the technology obstacles, capital obstacles, to reach that target, right? But it's a kind of step-by-step way of accumulating his assets and mobilizing his resources. Yes, next page.
William, I go on for this
yes,
group.
Please.
Thank you, William Hua. Well, if you look at GEELY as a multinational, international actor, first of all, we could try to understand the two different drivers that moved those strategy. On one hand, the first strategy was to access new markets or even new production factors, mainly in developing countries, Asian countries or East African countries, and later also access to technology. And the second driver was to repatriate the product and technology at home in order to expand in the fast-growing Chinese market. Next slide, please. So we can even in in our previous works before this book, we try to analyze sort of two parallel trajectories of this interesting case study. On one hand, the technological catching up trajectory, on the other hand, the international multinational growth trajectories. So in the first one, we will not go deeply here. They started with a pure imitation, simple reverse engineering to copy bodies or engines or parts of other vehicles, and then they became able to build their own product architecture, to innovate and integrate in a platform, in a product architecture. On the other hand, they followed quite a traditional path, starting from exportation to developing countries, and then quite physiological development into foreign assembly plants, exporting subsystem modules that were assembled abroad. And the two strategies find a sort of common ground. They join, they integrate when new strategy, asset seeking acquisition abroad, that asset seeking FDIs and acquisitions abroad, on the one hand was a mean to speed up the technology catching up process, on the other hand, a way to expand abroad. And by the way, there is a wide interesting literature, theoretical literature within international business on these strategic asset seeking strategies. They are very key way to interpret multinationals from emerging countries. So each chapter of our book has a part of discussing theoretical hypotheses at the beginning, at the end. So we try to develop empirical materials, of course, but in the light of this also theoretical discussion. From there was a further step, not the last one anyway, of global asset integrations and expansion of overseas market share. Next. If we focus on this international multinational growth trajectory, we can see at least 4 main steps. The first one was simple export to a large number of developing countries, Asian and African. Second step, well, the first direct production abroad was the minority participation into London taxi that William just mentioned. Then, since 2009, there was another FDI, very significant, very important in Australia. And finally, the full acquisition of foreign companies since 2009. The year is very significant because it's the year of the great financial economic crisis that created opportunities for new acquisition for Chinese companies and especially for GEELY. Next. Next slide, please. Okay. So some very rapid further information. In London taxi, there was an evolution starting with a minority share, about 20%, then the establishment of a joint venture in China and starting production of London taxi in China, where GEELY holded 51%. And finally, 4 years later, 2013, the full acquisition, that was a very important financial operations. Automatic transmission system, that's a very interesting case. There was a very high-tech frontier technology, innovative company in Australia, a leader in this automatic transmission worldwide. in deep crisis because of the 2008-2009 war crisis. And that created the opportunity for this full acquisition and absorption of that technology and use of that technology in production in China. That was a great opportunity of technological catch-up, recombination, and creative absorption on the side of GEELY. And finally, Volvo will come in the next slide to the most important case, of course, Volvo, but we had also the acquisition of British electric vehicle startup Emerald in 2014. Next, please. Next slide, yes. Okay, the acquisition of Volvo was a long story because what's interesting to observe is that there was a quite clear strategic vision. They wanted to make a huge acquisition for both the drivers I mentioned before, at least since the 2002, when they had grown enough to do that from the financial point of view, from the organization and managerial point of view. So there was a very active search, and finally they started the negotiation with Ford, that was the owner of Volvo Cars, since about a decade. By the way, within Ford, the performances of Volvo Cars had been quite bad, and for the first time since the creation in 1927, Volvo went into losses. So there was a huge investment in this process of negotiation, lots of lawyers, consultants, banks, financial actors, and including also, as William mentioned before, 2 provinces and 1 municipality in China that supported the deal in order to attract future investment in their territories. And that was closed, as you know, 11 years ago, 2010. Next. Okay, the post-acquisition governance was very interesting because in a first stage, the slogan and the policy was Volvo is Volvo, GEELY is GEELY. That means that there was a very high autonomy guaranteed to Volvo. Li Shufu was president, part of the board with another Chinese, but the other 6 persons were not Chinese. They kept the Swedish European top manager in the board. Volvo Cars came back to profits in 2013, and in the same year, at the same time, so independent strategy, independent companies, but early and gradually moves towards technological cooperation and convergence and even deeper integration. So the post-acquisition period was, on the whole, a sort of success story. Next. Okay. Volvo so not only returned to profitability in that turning point, the turning year 2013, but reached also high performance in sales that with a top of over 700,000 vehicles sold in 2019, before the pandemic crisis. And also a revival of sales in the US that had been decreasing. As a result, there was a positive feedback in Sweden. Torslanda factory is the historical plant close to Gothenburg. We visited 2 years ago, and 3 shifts were required because of this increase in production. Next. so with a positive impact in Europe and in Sweden. And as you can see from this table, the sales, the share of China was highly increasing from initially just 8% till 22% of sales, of Volvo sales in 2019. Next. Next slide, please. Just a short point, yes, this one, on cross-cultural relation. That's an interesting point. Why? Because ex ante, initially, the cultural distance was very, very high. It was striking from a Chinese company, from the point of view for corporate traditional, corporate culture, and the profile of the main actors. And in fact, there was a quite negative initial reaction by local media in Sweden, by local civil society, trade unions, and policy makers. A factor we could define liability of foreigners specific to Chinese, in this case to GEELY investor. Nevertheless, the approach GEELY is GEELY, Volvo is Volvo, the gradualist approach, the great autonomy worked quite well in initial years, till the turning point we can focus on in 2013. And so the expansion of Volvo in China produced positive feedback in Sweden, and the attitudes were fast changing. So that new situation allowed also the process of technology convergence, and local communities could see tangible benefits. Next. Okay, Volvo operations in China were two new plants, one in Chengdu in the western inner region, close to Chongqing city, and the other one in Hebei, in Daqing, in the northern part of China, while in Shanghai were located headquarters, R&D, Chinese capabilities, and corporate university. Next. Okay. R&D, innovation, and product development. The first step in the first years, Volvo is Volvo, GEELY is GEELY, there was anyway car modification adaptation. The first step is adapting the product for Chinese market. And that was made initially in Gothenburg, and then more and more in the new R&D center in Jiading, Shanghai. Local adaptation. But few years later, there was a new step, creation of new joint R&D center in Gothenburg, significant strategic move towards creating joint new platform. Next. The result of this move was the CVT, China Euro Vehicle Technology, a very huge center located not close to the factory, but within a science center, very close to the downtown, the city center of Gothenburg. And that's really a move from the asset seeking, acquisition, catching up to a new stage of, we define strategic asset creation strategy. So cross-cultural cooperation was really at work, because not only Chinese, Swedish, but researcher, designer from many European countries were appointed for that new center. The output was shared for the two brands, for Volvo and for GEELY. It was a main channel for joint research, and produced a new platform named CMA, with modularity and innovation. Next, then I leave. Next one, please. We go to conclusion. And so the result of the new platform was the new brand, Link Co, that was launched in 2017 in China with a number of innovative models, somehow intermediate between the Geely and China. And the new greenfield plant in China started production 2018, dedicated to this new brand, the new family of products. And that was a very significant result of synergy between Volvo technological excellence and Geely organizational, financial capability and knowledge the Chinese market. Next, and I leave back the floor to Hua for the conclusion and the last slide.
Thanks, Giovanni. And here, as we have mentioned that in the previous part, we dig a little bit deeper about the evolution of Geely Volvo case. It was by now it's close to 11 years marriage. And after the acquisition of Volvo, Geely continued to expand. And the very important action was to take the stake in the Daimler, and thus to become by now the biggest shareholder of Daimler. On top of that, it's not only a financial acquisition. While two companies established two joint ventures. One is about ride-hailing business in China, and another one is the smart car, the electric smart car project. So here, as what we mentioned, that there was a reverse technology transfer from Geely to Daimler in terms of the platform of E version smart car and its operation system. Secondly, in terms of the London taxi, we also very quickly talked about that. So we see that it continues to expand in that segment of the business. And the third one that is also significant is the Proton case. As we mentioned, that Geely did try to expand overseas market via CKD, SKD production, including the market like Belarus, among the others, as well as Malaysia, while encountered various difficulties, especially the protectionism in those host countries. That is the reason that Geely changed the strategy, and by using the acquisition. And even in that case, still in a smart way to make a 50-50% deal instead of main control of Proton's asset. So here we can also see a kind of the knowledge transfer from Geely towards Proton. We can also see the knowledge creation of building the electric platform for Lotus. So this it's still on the way, and it's worth to make the further observation. Next page. Next. Hello. Hello. Next. Yes.
It is next towards.
Yeah. Towards new mobility solutions. In fact, the initiative of GD on the mobility solution in one word is called MaaS, Mobility as a Service. It is various, right? It covers several projects with different levels of success. The low-speed electric vehicles, the economic vehicles, and the mid-range cars and the premium cars. So the among 4 projects, Cao Cao is relatively successful in terms of the size of the operation. And the partnership with Daimler for the premium cars is still a marginal operations. On top of that, GEELY has also some sort of incremental but also significant participation by capital and some marginal technology participation. One is the high-speed train, and another one is the launch, the production, in fact, the production and the launch of low-orbit satellites for the future service of high-precision positioning. It seems that by this year, GEELY will launch the satellite. There's also the radical innovation initiatives like the ultrasonic train and 2 flying cars. One is from the United States, a startup company called the Terrafugia, and another one is in partnership with Daimler, co-invested in the project of Volvo Copters. Next one. Next. Hello? The connection seems not stable. Hello? Okay. So we are closing to our conclusion by extending our research framework to the last part. The first part was presented by Giovanni, and with the evolution of our field research, we did find out a new phenomenon is the asset augmentation and the creation, illustrated by several cases like the smart car, like the CEVT project, like the proton cases. So we do find out the new dynamics of emerging multinationals, right? It is not a simple market seeking, asset seeking behavior, and now it's upgrading towards the asset augmentation and the co-creation process. Next page. Next. Okay, so those are the main findings of our book, and it's true that the GEELY continues to evolve in terms of its ambition on the electric vehicles, its ambition on the further expansion of clean commercial vehicles, and the very recent move, it's also its expansion to the mobile phone business. The ambition is to make a kind of a seamless connection between the mobile phone and the cars, so as to further improve the user's experience. Because it's in a similar way, we can find out that the several giants of mobile phone producers like Huawei, like Xiaomi, like Oppo, are also trying to access to the smart electric vehicles business. So this is a very maybe a kind of a unique phenomenon that we can find from China. By now, we don't not yet see the other mobile phone makers trying to follow this logic of kind of further extension and the seamless connectivity between different hardwares. So this is a new phenomenon that will trigger our further research topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bang. We now have some minutes for debate, general debate, and then the final conclusion.
Okay, so Winshen now is back. Maybe we can invite Professor
Yes.
Winshen Zhang to join the discussion part.
Yes, thank you, Weishan, for coming back.
Thank you. There are interventions for the debate. So if there are no more interventions in the debate, I will give some final comments on the book and on the meeting. I will conclude this meeting with a few comments about the book that I thought was an impressive book. It's a really excellent book which contributes to better understand 3 crucial matters, both for China and the world economy. The first point is entrepreneurship in China. Since the 80s, the explosion of private entrepreneurship, at the time masked and then official in this century, could cope with the planning and regulatory rules of the party state and mobilize, as in case of an outstanding and visionary personage like Li Shufu, a huge and growing amount of financial resources, both private and public. And the important point will be to know the exact distribution of the financial resources that GEELY could mobilize if they went from private resources or public resources, both local and central. The second point is internationalization. How a relatively small and technological backwards automaker as GEELY in the 90s could gain the control of a larger and technological advanced corporation as Volvo, and also indirectly enter in the capital of Daimler, one of the largest car producers in the world, and start a business with the German giant, as in case of the smart project of electric vehicles. Of course, we know that the way in which GEELY could get the shares in the Daimler concern was indirect, but it's important to recognize that the German government didn't stop it. And probably the third aspect is a rapid acquisition of brand, higher technology, and new markets is only due to the particular ability of Li Shufu, or also to the great and growing weight of the Chinese economy, its enormous size and its great scale economies, especially the automotive sector, and to the policy of the Chinese government in favor of rapid growth for human capital and research and development expenditure in selected sectors such as batteries, electric mobility, and so on. So I think that the great success of the GEELY story is partly due to GEELY, is partly due to the growing power of the Chinese economy as such, and the central and local economic policy in China. What do you think about that?
Thank you, Vittorio. I propose that Weishan, the first point you raised is about entrepreneurship and policy, public and private relations. So, and I propose that Wenshan that join us again, give a first answer, and then if William wants to add also some answer to about these points.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation. I truly apologize for the confusions. I realized I double booking. Truly apologize. So I definitely agree with Torio that entrepreneurship play a major role in the development of GEELY as an international enterprise. But also he's also benefit from the rise of China on the global stage. He rided the wave of China goes global. He was able to take advantage of the support from both the central government as well as the regional government. Right, the necessary funding, the land, resources, GEELY to expand its operation very rapidly. Very impressive development. But he definitely have that political wisdom, and also he's a very brief person. Vision, and he has the drive that contribute to the success of GEELY. So as to the future, next chapter is to be written. So we are keeping eyes on GEELY as its future directions. It has been very aggressive, but the future is not set yet. I think that GEELY, the last few years, had experienced some setback. Sales have come down 3 years in a row, and GEELY is now the market leader in terms of electronic cars in China. So it will be interesting to see what happens in the next few years.
William, you want to add some answers?
Yes, we in our book, in fact, this book was presented, almost each chapter is composed by kind of a very general literature review, then explore GEELY as a kind of the case. And we have also provided some remarks in terms of its brand strategy, and we did find out that currently there are so many brands, and sometimes it's not created in a rational way. Our observation, for example, the non-Chinese chief designer was not aware and has no decision-making during the moment of the creation of the brand. Secondly, is a kind of as a group, though GEELY is expanding to different directions. For sure, automobile is the core part. While as we mentioned that whether still it is questionable what is the boundary of the firm, right? If we are talking about transaction cost theories or among the others, what's the frontier of a company? Whether the move to the mobile phone mobile phone business is a kind of a necessity to be justified. So it's true that I have also mentioned the word of the soft budget constraint. from a sense in a pure planned economy or socialist planned economy system. While in a more market-driven economy in China, the soft budget constraint is still a hidden part that was to be observed. To see that this is part of the factor that justify why companies like GEELY are proven to be succeed in this or that to certain areas will receive the support from local regional government to invite them to develop even to some other business. So this is a kind of cautions we also address to GEELY. The third remark we have addressed after our book, when I talked to the CEO of GEELY, is that it's the moment after building platforms, CMA among the others. Now it is the time to fully leverage its technology strengths, because in one of the chapters that was written by me, talking about the transition of the platform strategy, which was not elaborated in today's presentation, we have talked that GEELY, the percentage of the car sold by its old platforms is still in a dominating situation, shares, right? So it still means that GEELY has not yet fully leveraged its resources in terms of the platform strategy. So that is also an important indicator to see. So logically speaking, if the percentage of new cars by adapting the new platform, then that will further justify a solid growth of GEELY, because the generally speaking the performance of the car must be better than the old platform.
Okay, I have not much to add, and I think my conclusion is that the trajectory of multinational growth of GEELY is extremely significant and useful to be discussed from the point of view of categories of international business, and was so flexible, so gradualist, and so wise in the field of transcultural dialogue and management. That's this case study of a relatively success story, or a very successful story. I think it was really wonderful experience for me, for better understanding what does it mean multinational growth for a Chinese and emerging country company. And I think from this presentation there was a very interesting overview and insight on the variety of dimension, and the pure technological, the financial side, and the brands and market, is the entrepreneurship, the relation between private actor and the policy context, including the dynamics of central state and provinces, that in these stories 2 provinces and 1 municipality at least played a crucial role.
We lost Professor Balse.
Giovanni, non ti sentiamo più.
the connection is not good from Giovanni's side.
Well,
Luca, can you
if
call Professor
Professor
Balse?
Zhang or Professor Wang don't have anything to add, we can close the section. Thank you very much, all the participants.